Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show 25 video for you guys, and today I'm going to be going over my must-have cards that are either so good value-wise for their position, or cards that may be more high-end, but I just think are worth it because of the longevity and the at-bats and stuff that they'll give your team. So, real quick before we get into it, if you do enjoy the content, I would urge you to like and subscribe. We're going to be running it up all year, posting good tip videos, lineup videos, player position videos, stuff like that. So if that sounds interesting to you, I would urge you to like and subscribe. And yeah, let's go ahead and hop in. Some must-haves are already kind of in my lineup here. Trea Turner, I think you're not finding a better value card than this for 20K. You can see I'm playing him in center field. I haven't really noticed the huge defensive thing that they kind of stress. They stress like bad fielders would be bad. I've seen Kyle Schwarber in left field, Aaron Judge in right field get to some pretty hard hit balls and just kind of seems random based on their reaction. It feels like speed isn't necessarily as important. So for me, Trea Turner can play center field, can play him at second base, can probably play third, and then has a primary of shortstop. So if you need one of those spots on your team and you've got 20K, I think you cannot go wrong with Trea Turner. Next up, Yordan, probably the best DH in the game if you don't have any of the collections done or don't have some of these higher end team affinity cards done. It's going to be hard for you to find a better DH than Yordan. Has breaking ball, has dead red. He's about 50K. It is a lot to spend, but you know, for the first month, you're probably sorted at DH more or less. Next up, Seager. This one's kind of debatable because he's not great against lefties, but it reminds me a lot of like launch day last year, where before people had Randy, before people had John Donaldson, and there wasn't a ton of great lefty starting pitchers, you could get away with just stacking your lineup with lefties, and it feels a lot of the same this year. Like if you want to run Kyle Schwarber, Seager, Babe Ruth, Yordan Alvarez, Ted Williams in your lineup, and your opponent is pitching a righty, they're probably not going to have a fun time. So I can see the argument for Seager. Also, with his clutch being super high, it kind of offsets that because half the time when you are having a lefty pitch to you, your contact will still be good because you'll have a runner on second base. So really enjoy Seager. Doesn't quite have as many quirks as he had last year, but still feels really good. Third base, Kobe Mayo. Love this card. I mean, for the money, for 12K, 10K, whatever you want to do, no quirks, but just insane power. Just lights out power out of Kobe Mayo here. I don't love his swing. It's not the best swing in the world, in my opinion, but it's fine. And you can't argue with the power that he has. There's not too many cards that do have, what, on aggregate, like 93, 94 power. That's pretty crazy. So I think this card is terrific value for what he brings. And then I think we're going to have to go to the market or inventory for a lot of these other ones. So I am not a huge fan of collections. There's a few collection cards I think are maybe worth it relative to how much you have to put in, but we'll get into that here in a second. Mike Trout, I think is worth it. Like if you just have 170K burning a hole in your pocket, you look at his power, like I said with Kobe Mayo, it's hard to find cards that have that much power at this stage of the game. And his contact, assuming you add some parallels, maybe run like the Bobby Grich captain or something, Trout's still going to be really good. And he's not a complete defensive liability. 80 speed will get to a lot of stuff in the outfield this year is kind of how I'm feeling so far. After Trout, I've got quite a few of the prospect cards. JJ Weatherholt, worth a shot. Don't love his power. It's not anything crazy, but he does have a lot of good secondaries. Like I was kind of showing with my lineup, it feels like secondaries don't matter as much as long as they kind of play that position already. But if you are paranoid about that, JJ Weatherholt does actually have a secondary. Roman Anthony looks pretty good. The power left is a little bit of an issue, but at least he has inverse splits to where he'll have better contact when he is hitting off a lefty. And then he's just one of the more well-rounded cards at this point in the game, so can't really argue with that. And then I've got two more spring breakout cards. Leo DeVry, again, kind of similar to JJ Weatherholt, where maybe not the most awesome, you know, eye-popping card on paper, but he's just well-rounded. plays second base, which I think is one of the weaker positions in the game right now, and he's a switch hitter. So for a free card that you can do just by running and doing the spring breakout program, and then I think maybe you got to earn some other packs via conquest, something like that. This card looks like an absolute stud. You'll probably see a lot of him at the start of the game. Christian Campbell, if you're going to get one of those prospect cards from the 25K pack, 50K pack, whatever, you want it to be Christian Campbell. When you look at this guy, he has some of the best all-around hitting stats for non-collection cards. Doesn't have any crazy quirks. I don't think his swing is the best in the world, but just crazy stats across the board, super well-rounded, and he plays every single position on the field. So if you have any holes in your lineup, he can fill it. And then the last card I think is kind of worth mentioning from these, or this kind of series, is Noah Schultz is cool. He's kind of similar to last year. If you use the Team Affinity one, it's pretty similar to that. He's even glitched in the same way, where his sinker is not going to ever hit 95. He's going to be throwing at 90, 91 most of the time. Still kind of has that janky release, so he's worth mentioning. And then Bazana, I kind of have a question mark on. I think just well-roundedness and kind of having a speedy second baseman, he's up there. Maybe his true value is more in center field, but I just don't necessarily think he's worth like 18K at this point. I think there's comparable cards that you can get for free, like Leo DeVry, who looks better. So, real quick, we will hop over to collections. I'll take you guys through some of the collections I kind of feel are worth it. First up, we have Blue Jays Outlighter. I mean, I think this card looks really good. The problem is he's not going to throw super hard. He has good hits. He has a really good pitch mix like he does every single year. The problem is he's just not going to throw that hard. So until you make it to like Hall of Fame, he's probably not going to be great. It's just hard for guys that don't have Outlier to generate outs on these lower difficulties. Most of them are just going to get tanked anyway. Really, the only pitcher that has Outlier in the game on like a 4-seam that's actually good right now is Paul Skeens. So I think he's probably worth it also. I don't know how I skipped over him, but can't go wrong with Paul Skeens. Has Outlier, has decent enough hits, and has a pretty decent pitch mix. So I would kind of stress him. And then if you want to do the Pirates collection with him, it's whatever. Bill Mazeroski, never really great in this show. Next up, got Tigers. I think it's not terrible because Scooball can slot in your rotation. I don't think he's necessarily one of the best in the game right now. But if he's your 4 or 5 starter, you're probably in a pretty good spot. And then this Gary Sheffield is decent. It's like 80 power, should have a good swing, actually isn't completely terrible in the field. And he has dead red and breaking ball. So I think you're getting decent value for locking in the Tigers if you really want to. Next up, Angels. Like I said, Mike Trout, probably worth 170K, even if it is old man Mike Trout. And then if you're doing that, you might as well do Mike Napoli, because he looks like one of the better hitting catchers in the game right now. So again, that's a pretty decent collection to do. Also, that division is pretty cheap, I believe. You got Mariners, couple diamonds there, A's, 1 diamond there. Who is Mason Miller, who's a pretty good value card in itself, and then you have Astros. So it's not the cheapest division, but you do get a pretty good division reward as well. And then the last one I wrote down is Reds, Reggie Sanders. New legend, looks pretty good on paper. Righty hitter, pretty bad contact right, shouldn't matter a ton. Really good power, not an awful fielder by any means. Doesn't have the craziest quirks in the world, but should be a really good card nonetheless. And it's not that expensive of a collection. You're getting Ellie, who is probably the best defensive shortstop, probably the best defensive second baseman with the way I've seen out of position players play. So that's a really solid collection that you can also knock out. Team Affinity. So Richie Sexton looks like one of the better ones. Like I've been saying, it's hard to find guys with that much power this early in the game. You got 91, 95 power, decent enough contact left. So after you make it to Hall of Fame, legend, if you are that caliber of player, he can sit on your bench and pinch hit. Has some okay quirks with first pitch hitter and dead red. So not a bad card by any means. Definitely one that I would prioritize going out and getting. I have the Silver Joe Kelly from yesterday's video on here. If you don't have that card, you can go get him in 2 seconds. Promise you, he's worth it. And then I have a gold Pedro Martinez, which might just be worth doing from the Nationals Team Affinity if you just need a solid little 4 or 5 starter that throws somewhat hard. It's more of like an online card than an offline grinding card. Next up, Andrew Miller. Jackson Jobe, probably not terrible to do. Does throw hard, does have an okay pitch mix, but it's just not really great. Justin Martinez, I think he's probably worth doing just because there's not a ton of outlier guys in the game right now. If you bring him in, there's a good chance that your opponent will just freak out. Kyle Schwarber looks like one of the best power cards in the game right now. Probably will struggle if you make it to like Hall of Fame with 62 contact right, but really, who's a Hall of Fame at this point in the game? Andrew McCutchen, like this card a lot. I was very turned off by this card when I saw it because of the low fielding and kind of low speed. But when you see how people like Aaron Judge and Kyle Schwarber play in the outfield, this guy will be pretty decent in the outfield, would be my prediction. Raleigh Fingers, if you played last year, you know about Raleigh. He had 2 cards that pretty much lasted the entire year. I assume he'll be maybe not to that same degree, but he will be good again this year. Jim Edmonds looks really good. Like I said, the problem with outfielders this year seems to be reaction and not as much their speed. Seems like 50 speed gets to about everything. Jim Edmonds, 54 speed, really good reaction, really good power, usually has a really good swing, and you're also looking at dead red and breaking ball. So he's an absolute stud to go out and get. John Franco, if you just need a lefty in the bullpen, he's always kind of hit and miss. You'll bring him in against some players, he'll shut them down. You bring him in against other players, he's given up 5 runs. There's really no in between. Matt Holliday, I have a question mark next to. The power is just pretty low. Like against righties, that's okay. Like if you hit a perfect and told me it went, I'd probably believe you. If you hit perfect against a lefty with him, it's probably going to get caught. Like 54 power, just not really ideal, even though he does have dead red, does have breaking ball, and a lot of people do enjoy his swing typically. Let's see, Babe Ruth, can't go wrong with Babe. Doesn't have the crazy quirks that he did last year, doesn't have breaking ball hitter here, but he still has dead red, still has first pitch, still has a pretty good swing, and still has some pretty well-rounded hitting stats. They're not anything to write home about. But at the end of the day, it is Babe Ruth. He will play good. George Brett, all right, kind of has the Matt Holliday question marks, but the power just might not be enough. It depends on kind of where you play at for your home stadiums. If you end up, in like the Met Stadium or somewhere low sea level wise, he's probably going to line out, fly out a lot. If you play Shieldwoods a lot, he'll probably be fine. Andrew Miller, mentioned him earlier. Really good value. There's just not a lot of great lefties out the bullpen. A lot of people enjoyed his pre-order card last year. This is a very similar card to that, so you should be able to get some pretty good burn out of him. Bobby Grich, if you just want a guy that can actually play second base, because there's not a lot of them, Bobby Grich can be your guy. If you told me Leo DeVry was a better second baseman for you, I'd probably believe you. But if you just want a pure second baseman, this Bobby Grich reminds me a lot of the start of the year, like Ryan Sandberg type cards that we get. Then other than that, that might be it. I feel like there's probably one more here that I skipped over. Todd Helton, worth a shot. Again, the power numbers are really bad. Does have dead red, does have breaking ball, does have first pitch, which I think are like the 3 best quirks you can probably have. And does have a really nice lefty swing. But at the end of the day, the power is what the power is. Frank Thomas, worth mentioning, just because hitting-wise, he's one of the best pure hitters out of this Team Affinity, but people absolutely hate his swing every single year. He's very, like, closed off, and he's usually, like, a push hitter or a balanced hitter, which isn't really what you want in the game. So a lot of people kind of struggle against him. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this has been educational. I'm sure as we kind of get to these program bosses, maybe I should have had Manny Ramirez in here, maybe even Mark McGuire, depending on what his swing looks like. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Till next time, peace.